Trigger warning, if you're one of those people who can't use your ears and instead need to be told by forums on the internet what to believe, this is not the video for you. Guys, welcome back to our series of video on what I'm dubbing Everything Ethernet Audio. So this is part 3 of what's going to be a much longer series of videos than what I had anticipated. And we're covering everything on terms of mechanics, and it's grown as to where I thought it would go, how to get the best sound for Ethernet audio. When I say Ethernet audio, I mean streaming audio, specifically Tidal, Qbuzz, Qobuzz, however you say it, Apple Music, whether you're using a Blue Sound node or whether you're using something more advanced like a Rose Streamer DAC or an Orinder, Auralac, whatever it is with separate DACs. Obviously, guys, it goes without saying that, and this is the disclaimer part of the video, more money doesn't necessarily equate to better sound. There are, if we take Ethernet cables as an example, I just came across a $250 Ethernet cable, which is fantastic. And I put it up against significantly more expensive cables, some of whom it beat, some of whom it didn't. But you don't need to spend a lot of money to get great sound. Having said that, generally speaking, the more money you spend, you do typically get into a higher class of audio gear. Whether you choose to believe it or not, doesn't bother me. I'm just telling you what my experience is. So I started in the beginning videos with, first I described in the intro video, specifically the songs that I use for reference music, why I use them, how you can use them, and what to look for. From there, we started looking into different switches, and I purchased 12 or 15 different switches, all with my own money. And we tried them in different ways, in different scenarios and different setups to see, is there a difference in sound between $30 switches and $35 switches and $100 switches. And I went into this being a switch skeptic. A quick recap is I got tired of people on the internet either saying there's no difference or there is a difference. I didn't know what to believe. In my mind, I didn't realize there and didn't think there could really be a difference. So I listened with my own ears, and even between $30 and $35 switches, I could clearly hear a difference. I started doing some research. There are things such as, first of all, guys, it's not all ones and zeros. So spare me it's only ones and zeros, and spare me it's only a digital signal being transported. Because if you believe that, I would strongly suggest that you actually educate yourself on this issue. John Swenson, who designed for 40 years the actual switches and networks for Broadcom and Cisco, has a great 2-page simple write-up. He talks about ramp-up time. He talks about ground plane noise and interference and things of that nature. So if you think it's only ones and zeros that we're talking about in packets, this is not the video for you, okay? At the end of the day, I don't measure any of my gear. I don't measure my speakers. I don't care what the measurements are. It either sounds good or it doesn't. What I like will very likely be different than what you like. What I hear will very differently be different than what you hear. Okay. So now that we got all that out of the way, I started with the inexpensive switches, and everything in my mind is from the $30 or actually the $19 5-port switch all the way up to the $100 24-port switch. We tried D-Links, we tried Netgears, Cisco's, and several other brands. And what's interesting is at the end of the day, I'm just going to cut right to the chase. I actually found the best scenario by accident. All of the testing was done using Blue Jeans cable, the 6A cables. And the reason why I use that is because they come with these little test sheets. They measure each one. Each one is guaranteed to be a true as rated speed, which a lot of the Chinese cables off of Amazon and stuff are not. It's very inexpensive. I think I paid on average $11 per cable. And clearly there are more expensive cables that outperform it. But as a baseline with inexpensive switches to just get started, that was the way I went. And I discovered by accident the benefit of stacking switches. How did I do that? I burn in all the switches for 100 hours before I do any listening. And on a couple of them I did try, there was noticeable difference between, I do 25-hour increments. I listen at 0 hours. I do at that point, I focus on just 2 or 3 test tracks, 25 hours, 50, 75, and 100. All of them started to sound good at 50. There was a better noticeable difference at 100. Actually, I take that back. Some of them never sounded good. They sounded better than their 0-hour state at 50, and 100 was the most noticeable. I'd say by 75, you're mostly there, but at 100, you're really there. But the way I discovered it by accident was I had listened with just a single D-Link. The D-Link was up till that point a winning switch. And the way I had it was I come out of the wall. It's like a 3-foot cable. It goes into whatever switch I'm testing. Then there's a 5 meter. So I go 1 meter into a 5 meter run over to where the rose is. I go into the rose and then out of that into the Luxman. Through various testings, I turned it on one night and I said, okay, this sounds great. And then I went into it the next day. And the next day I thought to myself, this sounds really different. This sounds so much better. What changed? It's already been burned in. And then I went over to the system and I noticed I accidentally had left. When I stopped listening last night, I plugged in another D-Link to burn in that I just, the finished burning that I just received. And the switches were stacked and it was noticeably better. And I thought to myself, wow. So through trial and error, I brought back all the other switches, the TP links, the this, the that. I found out an interesting scenario in that you can have too much of a good thing. When I took the winning $30 8-port, which sounds better than the 5-port, D-Link, which sounds better than the TP-Link. The TP-Link was better than some of the others, but it sounded tizzy. And the Netgear was horrible. Stay away from the Netgear. The Cisco, we had nothing but problems. We went through 2 or 3 different Ciscos, could never get them hooked up right within the system. That the TP-Link, the $30 TP-Link with the $30 TP-Link went from very good to even better. With a third TP-Link, regardless of whether I put it at the 1 meter end or whether I put the third one over by the rows, was too much of a good thing. So then what I decided to do was mix the winning D-Links, the $30 ones, with the more expensive 16 and 24 port boxes, switches, which were between $100 and $130. The D-Link one was the least expensive. I think it's a 16 at $99. And at the wall, if I run the D-Link, the $30 with the $99, and then that sounds good, and it sounds even better when I put a $30 by the rows. So it's cleaning up the signal after that 5 meter run. Those 3 together sounded the best for the inexpensive win, and I'm all in at about $160. I'm gonna put links to all the winning gear below, guys. So that sounded better than if I put all 3 by the wall. Then what I did was I decided to play with inexpensive linear power supplies. I purchased some ReliaPro linear power supplies, plugged them into the wall, directly into a power strip, and the actual switches themselves. There's a little bit of an improvement. But I had an old Audio Quest 2 or 3 laying around. It's $299. You can still buy them. And I put that over by the wall. I replaced the power strip. I put that over by the wall where the switches were. And I plugged the switches into that. And that was as large an improvement as when I stacked the switches. So the two biggest improvements at this point was finding the right mixture of switches to stack and then plugging them with their factory power supplies into the power conditioner. Those two things in and of themselves was a dramatic improvement overall. If I used 3 still of the $30 D-Links, it was still a little too tizzy, a little too harsh on the top end, a little too bright. But when I mix in 2 of those with the $199 D-Link, that just seemed to even things off a little bit. I will say that as I tested more expensive cables, in fact, right now our winning cable is for 1 meter, it's $1,200, is a Siltec. It's the best Ethernet network cable I've heard at any price. Certainly, I've got a review coming on that. Phenomenal, but I can still hear just the slightest bit of tizziness in the voice on certain songs, and I'm convinced it's because of those D-Link boxes, that they are really, really good, but they're not as good as when you get into the high end. So where I'm at currently is you can be into the switches for $160, and then I think it's $300 for the box, the power conditioner. So you're now into it for $460, and by the time you buy a bunch of Blue Jean cables, you're into it for under $500. That gave me better sound improvement than some of the other higher end audiophile switches, a single audiophile switch by itself. So when it comes to whether I spend $800 on a single audiophile switch or this setup, I would do this setup from what I've experienced in my system. It is also going to give you significantly more cleaning out of the artifacts and the interference and things of that nature by going through multiple switches. When you stack it that way, it's going to give you better, for lack of a better terminology, cleansing of the signal. That is the winning one for a low-cost way to go. Then I played, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, with adding a gigafoil. Now, I'm going to do a separate review on the gigafoil, but I will tell you that adding a gigafoil, so I had the two, I had a $99 box, then I had a $30 box, then I had the 5 meter run, then I had a $30 D-Link box that went into a short run into the gigafoil. Out of the gigafoil I think sells for about $600. Out of the gigafoil into the Rose, that was the third massive jump in terms of sound. I tried the gigafoil by itself, and the gigafoil by itself was still very good, but when I added in the additional D-Links and the power conditioning, is just exponential in terms of the overall airiness, clarity, openness, just a little bit more ease in the music. So it's definitely worthwhile, and you're now into it for right around the $1,000 mark. I, again, would still rather do all this for $1,000 or roughly $1,000 than just a single $800, $900, $1,000 switch. In my experience, a single switch isn't going to give you the benefit of all these additive type components. So let me link to this stuff below. It's going to be different. It may be different on your system, guys, depending upon what gear you're using, depending upon how dirty or clean the Ethernet signal is coming into your house. Are you running fiber from the street? Are you running 20-year-old old cable? Those are all, how much interference is in your walls? That is going to affect all this dramatically in your system. So you may or may not find what worked for me works for you. It's also going to be a matter of system synergy. So the different boxes that didn't work for me may work for you. This is just my personal experience. From a system, the current test system right now consists of Klipsch La Scala speakers, Z-Wave cables in terms of speaker cable interconnect. It's got Siltec Ethernet cables, along with several other internet cables that I switched in and out for the testing, the gigafoil, and then also the D-Link boxes, which I will link to below. So give it a shot. Let me know how it works out for you. I think this is a really big bang for a buck at about $1,000. And it frankly is piquing my curiosity more. I will also add that I'm going to do more on this later as well, but I did put some rubber feet in between each of the switches that I was stacking, and that did further help clean up the sound. So vibration control, even on these cheap boxes, I call switches boxes for some reason, I don't know why, does make a difference. I will say that I don't want this to sound brash, but guys, if you're running 20-year-old Bose speakers or Sherwin Vegas or a 20-year-old receiver, or frankly, maybe even just more modern stuff, but that you buy from Best Buy, or that's, Marantz, the lower end NADs and stuff like that, I've got nothing against that. But that isn't really the type of system, the high resolution, what I call a high resolution system, that's going to help you hear this. If you're in a room where your speakers aren't set up right against the wall, if you don't have room conditioning, if you're running lower end streamers, you're not set up to hear what difference this can bring. So you have to decide that this may or may not be worth it for you. Again, if you're into a lower fidelity system, which is totally okay, they can still sound great. Don't go spending all this money on Ethernet stuff. You're probably not going to notice a difference. But give it a try if you are looking for it. The good news with Amazon is if it doesn't work for you, if you buy it from Amazon, you have the return period. But I've really been pleased and frankly incredibly surprised at how even minute changes can make a big difference. And I'm going to leave you with this, that I'm dubbing this a game of inches. And what I mean by that is that although these are slight improvements every single time I do this, some larger than others, vibration control is a perfect example. Once you hear the cumulative effect of several slight improvements, along with some bigger improvements, the sum of all this is significant, to the point where even if you take away some of the smaller things, such as a power condition, although that's pretty big, or let's say the vibration control, or finding the right cable, it will take a very big step back once you've gotten acclimated to the better sound. So it's a game of inches in that I'm not sure that I believe that if you spend right off the bat $15,000 or $20,000 or $25,000 on just a really good streamer or DAC or whatever it is, or right up front a single box solution, that you're hearing the best you can hear. Although there's no doubt it's going to sound very, very good, I think you're going to get a bigger bang for the buck by buying several lower cost components and building into it and addressing all these issues than just a one-stop solution. So find out what works for you. Guys, just have fun doing it. I'm just enjoying the experimenting. We actually have quite a bit more to come on this topic. I'm very excited about what we have coming up. We actually have reviews on SOTM cables coming up. We have reviews on another Korean brand, which we tried their cables and their Ethernet filters. Very excited to talk about that and others. So stay tuned. Please make sure you like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Unfortunately, we have a lot of those people who don't want to use their ears. They just come on board and dislike the videos. So stay tuned. Please subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.